This, in retrospect, it was simple, but not knowing that, it took years. Right. It took me 12 years to find what we now know is that the atomic mass of the elements, the numbers of the atomic mass, are the numbers that equate to the mysterious letters in the ancient alphabets. What that means is when you look at human DNA, or the DNA of any life, it is made of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and using gematria, the numbers that equate to those become 1, 5, 6, and 3. 3 is with the carbon. And when you then take a table, one of the ancient tables, and you're able to correlate those numbers with the letters, what we find, George, is that the human DNA is built in layers. And at the top layers, it's like every book has an introduction. The introduction in every cell of every form of life, carbon-based DNA, the introduction is the same. And the first translation literally reads, literal, God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. And God that is depicted in DNA is actually spelled the way that the name of God was spelled in the ancient text before it was removed 6,800 times. In the Torah, for example, the sacred name of God is believed to be so sacred it cannot be written in its entirety.
Why put it in a code?
So first, as a scientist, what I have to say is this. People say, why is the code there?
Yeah.
And I say, I don't know. All I know is that when I followed the instructions in a 3,000-year-old text and I applied it to the periodic table, this is what we have. Next question, is it a coincidence?
So there are no coincidences.
I had a statistician run the numbers for me, and the odds of this happening by chance are 1 to 234,256.
Yeah.
234,256 to 1 are the odd, or 0.00041%.
Right.
Those are the odds that it's
just random.
Just random. Now, those aren't astronomical odds. I thought it might be like 1 to a bajillion, you know. But when you take into account,
they're still high.
Not only is the language there, but when you take into account what the words say, that those words actually have meaning, God eternal within the body.
And they all say that.
The first letter in all human DNA, if you can look at what's called the genetic code, CTAG, every one of those is made up of combinations of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. Right. And they're arranged different numbers of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen atoms. So within each of the DNA bases that make our DNA as it is, there are different combinations of CTAG that break down the different combinations of God eternal within the body. And the God within our cells, within our DNA, is literally the same spelling of the God that was taken from those texts. Now here's the beauty, I just have to say this.
All right.
My first fear was I found it in the Hebrew language, and I said, does that mean, could it actually be divisive if it only is found in one language? And when the research went to its fruition, what we found is it is in Hebrew and Aramaic and Sanskrit, 3 of the root languages.
The same thing.
Exactly the same thing. So in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Sanskrit, the code for those letters translates precisely the same in the human DNA. That's the first layer. Because the odds of that happening by chance are
astronomical,
are steep, it tells me there's an intentionality. And then I began to think, in our modern world, we're creators, we're artists. Whenever we create something that we're proud of, when we're finished, what's the last thing we do when we finish it, George? You tell me, what is the last thing we do with something? We finish a painting, and what's the last thing we do when we finish that painting?
You sign it.
We put our name on it. If there's an intentionality underlying life itself and human life specifically, it would make tremendous sense to me that who or whatever is responsible would somehow have left a sign.
Is it God's signature?
I believe that, however we define that, whatever we believe that creator is. My next question is, why not put it into a text or into a temple wall? And then my thinking was, why place that signature into something that can crumble over a few thousand years, like a temple wall, or into the pages of a book that can be destroyed? Why not put it in the creation itself? And as long as the creation exists, the message exists as well.